I'd like to bring on my panelists, and you will come to the front of the line once you say hello. So Margot, introduce yourself, and you'll be at the front of the line for us.
So I'm Margot Astrachan. As you can see, we're all labeled, and I'm really happy to see so many of you here today. That is wonderful, because community can help the situation that we're in. I have 3 shows, you know, since we're on hold or an intermission or whatever you want to call it. Diana, which is at the moment got all its possessions locked up in the Longacre Theater. The Prom, which is due to start a national tour in 2021, and Radio Galaxy, thanks to TRU, which will have a London reading as soon as their theaters are able to work again at the Hampstead Theatre. So all of those are on intermission, I guess you would call it. And there's lots to say about that. And we have 2 other terrific panelists, so I want to hear what they have to say.
Okay, Martin Platt, you say hi. And Atita, I can't stop your video. Your video is like stuck. So there we go. Okay. So now.
Hi, Martin Platt. I have a lot of friends on here. Lester Shane and I went to Carnegie Mellon together, and he was in my first company at Alabama Shakespeare Festival too many years ago to remember. And I'm executive producer on a musical of Michael Colby's. Amy Stoller and I have done 100 shows together, it seems like. And I was on a phone meeting with Tamara Pica this morning. So it's like going backwards in a good way.
That's what we call a community.
Yeah. I had 2 shows closed in the pandemic, a tour of The Last Ship starring Sting, which will go back out on tour in fall 2021. I had Woman in Black running downtown at the McKittrick, which will reopen as soon as the McKittrick reopens. And meanwhile, we've got 3 off-Broadway shows, which will open as soon as we can open. I'm EP on another Broadway musical. I'm developing a musical in Australia. I'm developing an animated TV series and a film to shoot in Japan, and in pre-production for a feature film, which I will direct if we can ever direct movies again. Other than that, I'm not busy.
Nothing much going on. Okay.
No.
RK.
Hi, everybody. RK Greene. My company is the Storyline Project, and glad to be here with Martin and Margot. Glad you have all joined us. The show that I have on hold is a show called Beau, which is a brand new musical by Douglas Lyons and Ethan Pakchar. Brand new story, brand new music, all exciting stuff. And, you know, we are on hold in queue for several theaters and trying to find when that will open up to be able to move this show forward.
So my question to all 3 of you, my initial question really is, we know that you have projects on hold. Are you finding that there's anything useful that you can do right now to keep those projects, the energy going, the energy alive, or are you finding yourself moving to other things to do while we're waiting? Margot.
So we just did a Zoom reading of Radio Galaxy last Friday. We had 2 producers in London, 1 in Chicago, a couple in LA, friends here to listen, colleagues here, my producing partner. We had 1 actor in London, 2 in LA, 1 in Connecticut, and the rest in New York. And it sounds daunting, but you can do it. You know, you have to do it. We needed to hear certain things in the script. And it really, all things considered, worked very well. The one problem is that when you do an equity Zoom, you can't record it. And I think the unions are wrong, but that's the way it is. Other than that drawback, it will work certainly for something in development. And as far as Diana is concerned, they've been working on Zoom for months. I mean, it's almost been a blessing because the first act really needed some reworking, which it's gotten. It's wonderful. So, you know, you can turn it into honey or you can turn it into vinegar. And that is going to be in your hands, what you're going to do.
Well, that is, I think of another question based on what you just said. First of all, who are the lead producers on Diana?
Beth Williams and Jack Lynn
So how are they keeping
and
you?
Araka.
How are they keeping you and everybody on the producing team engaged?
That's a good question. They're keeping us informed. We have had a couple of big Zoom meetings, and in between, they're letting us know what's going on. Also letting us know what's going on with the insurance, which is a problem. We've been reading about that. And yeah, I think they've been doing a pretty good job. The Prom, not as much because they were trying to figure it out, and the Prom has a movie coming out too with Meryl Streep.
And is the recording of that, was the production on that finished?
They were able to almost get it done, and they managed to fudge just the one scene. And luckily it had been almost 100% shot when this happened.
Martin, the same question to you is: are you putting any energy into the productions that are on hold, or are you moving towards new pieces, new projects? What's?
I think all the above, Bob. On the projects on hold, on Woman in Black, for instance, we're getting the visas processed for the actors to come back, even though we don't know when they can be in the country, because visa issues are very difficult under the Trump government. We're getting new visas, I believe, that start in January, so that whenever we can reopen, the guys can come back. I keep in touch with all the people on other projects, probably every other week. We just chat, and on the new projects, we're working on Zoom readings. I do a lot of Zoom meetings, and just address something that Margot said. And I know you don't really believe this, Bob, but I think this is actually true. Is it has been determined that if you're doing a reading or presentation of a new show, which you have not ever put on a stage in front of people live, despite what they say, Actors Equity has no jurisdiction whatsoever. If they say that, it's just not true. But the Off-Broadway League has determined with their lawyers and Equity that only SAG-AFTRA has jurisdiction. So if you're doing a reading of a new play to show to investors or future partners, it's a SAG-AFTRA contract. Equity can do nothing because they only have jurisdiction over live performance.
Yeah, but this is not with the Off-Broadway League. This is the Broadway League.
That makes no difference. Equity has no jurisdiction over anything except live performance.
Now you tell me.
Well, this determination just came up Wednesday or Thursday.
Ah, okay.
And if at any point the project has had a live reading or production you've been involved with, then Equity does have some jurisdiction but basically, yeah, you can do that, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper, and you can stream it for 13 weeks.
13 weeks. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
But the other thing to be aware of is that you have to find out what the SAG-AFTRA contracts are, and you actually also have to have a SAG-AFTRA signatory, don't you?
Yeah. But for anything
we've done, the things you have to deal with, it's just a little housekeeping you have to take care of.
Yes, but with the SAG-AFTRA thing, it's really simple if you're not charging admission. If you're doing it invitation only, then it's a single payment. It's very, very low, and on you go.
And by the way, to the room, I just want to remind you, you have a virtual hand raise. We're going to keep an eye out for any questions that you may have while we're talking. So click on your virtual hand raise. We're not going to be able to see you visually, so we need you to do the virtual hand raise or type a note into chat if you can't raise your hand. RK, how much are you how much energy are you putting into Beau right now versus other things?
Well, actually quite a lot. We had a really great 2019, a Lincoln Center production, or actually presentation of a concert reading there. We had an out-of-town actual full production at the Adirondack Theater Festival. We recorded an album through Sony Masterworks Broadway, and then we had a live debut of that at Joe's Pub. So there was a lot of momentum that we had going into 2020, which kind of as March came in, kind of slowed down. But what we've been doing is keeping it quite alive. For instance, we now have over 100,000 streams on the Sony Masterworks album and its position there, which we support on Facebook and Instagram and the like. We have had a project whereby we invite singers on Facebook to sing several of the songs to submit for being highlighted on Sony's website. And then we also get a chance to involve their followers into the Beau websites and the Beau Facebook and Instagram pages. And then we are had most recently had a song of ours in the Pride plays that Doug Nevins and Michael Urie have at the Rattlestick Theater. There was a concert just on Monday or Sunday night, and we have been promoting that as well to generate an audience for this show that nobody knows about. It's by people that they don't know about, and it's a story that's not based on a book or a movie. So we're using all those avenues to be able to create our audience. And the last thing we're doing is we're getting our housekeeping in order. I'm the lead producer, so we've hired our counsel, we've hired our accountants, we're putting our operating documents together, we're putting our offering documents together, we're negotiating with various talent as well. And we now have a group of actors that have done a number of shows within. So we have kind of a pool that we can work at, so that our aim is to be flexible and ready to pull the trigger on a show as soon as something's open. Whether something falls out of a season in the regional theaters or there's a theater open here in New York, we want to be ready to go. And so far, that's what we're focusing on.
It sounds very, very comprehensive, actually. Doing a lot. I just want to straighten out a couple questions in the room. Zoom performance is not considered live, even though it's being presented live. It's the same as if you watch a TV show that's being presented live. It's a semantic thing. When we say live in this context, Martin is talking about in a theater space, as opposed to being recorded and broadcast. Things can be broadcast live, but that's a different live. Can SAG-AFTRA actors appear in those stream productions? I would assume yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's SAG-AFTRA jurisdiction, so everyone is paid SAG-AFTRA, equity or SAG. It doesn't really matter. And it's under their new media agreement at SAG-AFTRA.
So Martin, are you saying it's not under equity at all?
No.
If it's zoomed?
Because the production's never been live. So it's just like if an equity member does a TV show, you have no jurisdiction. Okay. It's legally, it's treated the same way.
Because we were told we couldn't.
But probably by equity.
Yes.
Because they want jurisdiction, but they're wrong.
I see.
They really are wrong. And I think all of us on and off Broadway have had problems with equity telling us things were true that aren't since the shutdown.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thanks. So does that mean we could do it again?
Well, if we did it over again, I mean, the problem is you've already let equity have jurisdiction on this show. So then they would chase you and say, well, but no, we already have jurisdiction because you gave it to us.
Well, we didn't.
Knowing them.
We didn't really. We just, complied, but we didn't.
Yeah, okay, probably. Thanks. I mean, if you want to email me separately, Margot, and let me talk to the lawyers and let me
I will.
Find out.
But I think what you're saying is important for all these people to hear too, because how do you negotiate, and to do Zoom work is feasible for people if they understand what the jurisdictions are and what they can do. And here for me, this is, my partner and I are both Broadway League members. We didn't know, but it happened right before what you're saying. Thank you very much.
I made it a thing in my life to be a member of everything, Broadway League, Off-Broadway League, SALT. So I get everyone's version of truth. The only area that has not been resolved yet is streaming pre-existing content, like a pre-existing recording of a play. How does that really work?
And another aspect of it that somebody is asking is, do all public domain plays read on Zoom fall under equity rules? And I would say that they don't, because it's only the production of that particular play that would be under equity's guidelines. A live performance of that particular play can't be suddenly transferred to a broadcast.
Yeah,
but
I mean, as long as there's never a live audience watching the performers live in the same room, it's not a theatrical production.
Yeah, so the fact that the play is public domain means that you probably don't have archival footage of it having been performed. So you're performing it new, so it's a new production. I don't think the rule refers to the play, it refers to the production. Looking to see what other questions are coming up.
I'll say one thing. One of the things I'm really interested in, and I know they did it in Chicago for a brief time right after the shutdown for Loop theaters that were actually in production when they were closing the theaters, was to be able to stream live performances. And we may be facing, as theaters open, that we won't be able to sell all the seats in a theater. A third, maybe half at best. And so to be able to increase the audience reach that we have and get payment for it as well. You know, I am pursuing, trying to get equity to agree, and SAG and AFTRA to agree, that you can do a live stream of a on-stage production and be able to reach a much larger audience.
Arcade, if you shoot me an email, I can check back through my archives, because years ago, when Meredith Lucio and I and Dave produced Bedlam's Hamlet and St. Joan at the old 45 Bleecker, Meredith wanted to live stream Hamlet into public schools. And so we actually investigated through equity first, and they told us we had to go to SAG-AFTRA. And we went to SAG-AFTRA and we made the deal for the streaming. And I know it was separate because the equity actors got really pissed off because they worked a 16-hour day for no overtime. And we said, you didn't work a 16-hour day. You worked an 8-hour day for Actors Equity, which is legal, and you worked 8 hours under the SAG-AFTRA contract. You were doing 2 separate jobs.
Yeah.
So there was no relation. So I think in this case, there may be an interesting area where you can live stream that production for money if everyone in the show gets the SAG-AFTRA scale on top of the equity salary.
Yeah, and
that may indeed be
it's
legal.
a weekly salary, I think, not only from the equity side, but also from the SAG-AFTRA.
Well, Martin, earlier you said it was a one-time payment.
Well, SAG-AFTRA is, I know, is probably a one-time payment.
But it's only for a one-time showing. You know, I want to do it every night, and so we'll that's something that we want to see. We'll figure it out.
Right, but you know, if you want to do it every night, again with the Hamlet, we live streamed it from the theater, but then they allowed for it to stay up on a server and be accessed by people for like 2 months after that. We didn't have to stream it every day.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway.
Right, thanks.
I just want to acknowledge that I see Jeffrey and Joel have their hands up. But before we go to that, I just want to respond to something Arcade said. There are some theaters, regional theaters, that are already setting up their theater for live presentation, socially distanced. I know Julianne Boyd is doing it. There's an actual video of her reconfiguring her theater seating so that she can actually have people socially distanced. So it looks like, from what I've seen online, it looks like people are actually physically removing seats rather than just marking off where people can sit.
But Bob, does anybody know though, because I had heard a week or so ago, because I had heard a long time ago that Julianne was doing this, but that Equity had yet to approve their members working there despite that.
That did not come up in the video that I saw. I saw a YouTube presentation about what she's doing. She and actually also Maria Gallanos at the DC company with an animal name, Woolly Mammoth. Okay. Jeffrey, did you want to ask your question? I'll unmute you. Or I won't. Let's see. Jeffrey, you want to unmute yourself and ask?
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. Great.
Martin, when you were talking earlier about what the lawyers have been going through about jurisdiction between SAG and equity, I presume that you were talking about shows that were already organized as live plays under equity and not shows that were being organized first as a stream for direct distribution on the internet. I've been going back and forth with the two unions about that, trying to get a straight answer. It's my understanding that under the new media agreement, I could charge. The only question is whether I have an audience or not, which may influence the jurisdiction. Did you have any discussion about that?
Well, no, I mean, if it's a play with a live audience, or the capture was done while it was a play with a live audience, then equity has some kind of jurisdiction, but nobody's figured out what you pay to who.
But that's if you sold tickets, right? If it's a studio audience, is it under the SAG-AFTRA agreement and equity has nothing to say about it?
But studio audience meaning what?
It's like a live sitcom with a studio audience. You bring people in to respond to the taping that's being taped exclusively to sell and distribute on the internet without selling it or mounting it as a live production first under the Stage Actors Union jurisdiction.
Right, but are you like slicing hairs in half here? Because if this was done before the shutdown and it really was a live stage performance and you're just saying, well, it's the same as the studio, that wouldn't work. If
I'm saying what I want to do is produce a musical for sale on the internet that is not going to be shown in theaters. I will rent a theater in which to shoot it. I may have an audience laughing and enjoying the show there like a studio audience would in a sitcom. And I believe that as long as I'm not producing that for the live theater under equity's jurisdiction initially, that they have nothing to say about it.
They probably don't, but then, I don't know that much about SAG and AFTRA day to day, but then technically they might treat it very differently if as an actual, television show created for the internet, created for streaming, like everything on Netflix is.
Right.
And
Well,
that might be even more expensive.
So that's not something you've heard discussion of in that legal forum you were discussing.
No, because most people, if you can have an audience, you're going to go back in the theater.
Right.
And
Okay, thank you.
So Jeffrey, you'll basically have to write a letter to equity and describe your situation, and then we're going to have to do what they do with everything else.
I've actually been waiting for 4 months for SAG and for SAG-AFTRA to get back to me with the answer to the question I just posed, and they haven't done so.
You get an answer from SAG-AFTRA first.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
The other thing, Bob, and I think you guys know this, but that some theaters are doing around the country. I have a friend down at the Barter Theater in Abingdon, Virginia. This doesn't work for New York, but they do 2 big summer musicals, which are cash cows for them. And they're stuck in this shutdown. So they got permission to use an abandoned drive-in movie theater and put in a stage and equipment. And they're doing both the shows for 3.5-week runs each in the drive-in movie theater. And you drive in your car and you sit in your own car and you watch their stage productions.
Yeah, but how close can the actors be to each other, Martin?
I asked her to send me the protocols. I'm trying to find out.
Because that's a really big question.
Yeah.
But a great idea. I should fill them in on what's going on in London because it's different than here. London, the theaters that receive government aid, they're furloughed. And the artists and directors and so forth are not permitted to even answer an email or do any work until that's over, which is really crazy. And then small independent theaters like the German Street Theater, which is off West End, like our off-Broadway, it has 70 seats. It's like an off-Broadway, but it's a good one and they do a lot of new work. They've been told that they can open their building but they're not permitted to present any theatrical productions. So their artistic director sent out, you know, he filmed himself explaining what had happened and saying, in our, you know, we went through this and it would cost us more money to open the building than keep it closed. So we're just going to keep it closed and hope for the best. And if you want to send us some money, please do, basically. I mean, they are interesting over there, how they think. People here, on the other hand, are not getting the government, you know, support beyond a certain number of months. And that's a whole other set of problems, but it's very different here than it is there. And they're being very rigid over there.
I have some specific questions that I wanted to ask, but Joel, I see your hand has been raised. Do you want to ask your question now, or can it wait till the end?
It can wait. That's fine. Well,
Okay.
actually, it might be something that would help everybody.
All right.
Yeah, because I'm actively talking to actors now about doing a Zoom recording for me, and I'm confused. I'm not really sure what am I telling them are the parameters of what we're going to do. I know about the SAG new media contract, but I'm not really sure how to describe it to an actor, and you know, have them understand what's expected of them and what's expected of me. Can you guys help me with that?
Do we know enough about what you're doing yet? Have you filled us in? What is the purpose of your recording?
The purpose of the recording is to expose it to the, you know, to perform it and play it in different venues and different platforms and things. Yeah, I'm doing one of Kate's Monday night readings in September with it.
So this is
That's the start.
Is it okay? So it's not really a production; it's a developmental tool.
Yes.
For marketing your piece.
Yes.
I think the person to talk to about that would be Kate, because she's the queen of SAG-AFTRA right now. She's a signatory.
Right.
You have to go through somebody like Kate to use it. But my understanding is that you basically pay the SAG-AFTRA rate, or you can pay more than that, for the day of the recording. You just ignore the rehearsal period. And that gives you the rights to put it on a private streaming platform for 13 weeks.
So you can record that way. It's not just a live.
No. It's to record it.
It can be recorded.
Yeah, because if it was live, nobody has jurisdiction if it's live, actually, in a funny way.
Hmm.
So I'm going to say something here. I think it's really important for us to be able to expand our audience. And the only way to do that, especially since the theaters are going to be closed or in reduced capacity, and people aren't going to be able to congregate as they used to be able to go on to other media. And so I think we as producers have to be able to embrace that, along with, you know, the kind of artistic integrity that we have with a live performance, and try to bring that into a much broader sphere.
Well, that actually brings up what I was going to ask all three of you. I wanted to know whether are being forced into the situation where we're doing virtual presentations and we have to be in isolation. Are there things that you have learned that you find are useful for now and for the future? Is this just a temporary thing for you, or are there tools? Do you think that Zoom and these other things are tools that you are going to be using on an ongoing basis as part of the theater vocabulary going forward? Anyone?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'll just continue on. Zoom has been, and its other types of platforms have been great in terms of developmental. For instance, Margot had mentioned about Zoom readings. Well, we've also had Zoom readings. We had people in Canada. We had people in Florida in part of the cast. And we were able to get them together to work on some new updates of the script. And that was really very helpful. And we had our music director, we had our director, we had the producers on board, and we could easily schedule that and be able to move that script forward to where we wanted. And we thought it was very helpful.
Margot, how about you?
I'm finding it extremely helpful in terms of interaction between producers and myself, because with Radio Galaxy, we have 3 London producers that are, want to work on it. to see them face to face on Zoom is very, very helpful, as opposed to, just a conference call. And it changes the tenor of the interaction. And I think in terms of actual work, being able to see and hear the actors on a Zoom reading, while not ideal, really, really helped us and is moving the project along. So, as I said before, you can make vinegar, you can make honey,
So Martin, how are you making honey?
Well, I mean, like Margot said, I love the Zoom meetings, and I think a lot of us are finding out that even if we have a Zoom meeting with people, all of whom are in Manhattan, it's so much easier to have the Zoom meeting than everybody schlep half an hour to a meeting. You get there early, you say hello, then you have to schlep half an hour back to your house or office. And it's no less productive. I think one good thing that could come out of this, if we can figure out how to manage it with the unions, which will be a little tricky, but I think there's a way, is doing a reading of a new play or musical that's really well put together. The way we usually do it in a rehearsal room or a small theater, and we get to invite people to a couple presentations. So you got one at 4 o'clock on Monday and one at 11 a.m. on Tuesday. But there are 9 million reasons that people can't come. If there were a way to do a Zoom reading before the live reading in the future, then that Zoom reading, after you do the live reading, you can do the separate Zoom reading, stick it online, and the people that couldn't join you can still participate. And I think that would open up tons of people who honestly want to come to your reading sometimes, but they just can't. Something else comes up, whatever. And I think the opportunity for a much broader number of industry professionals to see the work, or people from regional theaters who are never in New York, to be able to say, you can all log in to this private YouTube channel and see the show we think you'd be interested in, would open up a huge world and make literary managers all over America tear their hair out.
I think that's feasible now because perceptions are changing because of what we're going through. It used to be that we didn't consider filmed versions of shows a particularly effective way of showing the work to prospective interested parties, investors or whatever. I think that it was not done a lot because there's something so static. And now we're in a situation where it is a static medium because you have people in different rooms pretending to be interacting with each other. So there's a convention that I think people are accepting now, which might make these presentations a little bit more acceptable than they used to be.
And also, Bob, in a 29-hour reading, which is the basic vehicle we use to first show people a new play or musical, more often than not, the kind of minimal staging and people staring at their scripts and somebody in a corner reading stage directions, to me, is a lot less compelling than a person right in front of a camera, all that cast. You can stick titles on the bottom of the screen. You don't have to read the stage directions. You can put on the bottom of the screen, an explosion is heard in the background, or do whatever you want to. And I actually find it easier to concentrate on the play, which is what you're supposed to be concentrating on, and not on, did they cross to music stand 2 or music stand 4?
So
Well,
Margot,
I
also
have one caveat with that, though, in that you can't see the actors interacting with each other the way you can, in a live presentation. So that if there's a love scene or an argument or whatever, you can only get it in the stage directions. So it's not perfect, but it's what we have.
But you know what's interesting, Margot, about that? And I've noticed this. I actually saw this in a live reading of a play that I was involved with. And then it hit me when I watched these is, if there's 2 actors, for instance, playing a love scene. Let's say you were doing Romeo and Juliet streaming for some reason, and you've got the 2 of them. The 2 actors, when you're making the streaming, are looking directly at each other, even though they can't see each other. Well, they can see each other because they're both on screen. And actually, in a funny way, you're getting the reverse shot of both actors. So you're seeing the whole relationship. And as I've gotten used to it, I kind of do see the actors acting with each other in these. I think especially TV and film actors do Zoom readings better than theater-only actors do.
Well, For instance, in Radio Galaxy, which Bob knows very well, there's a fever pitch that's built up to when one actor hits another. You can't possibly do that. In our case, one of the actors was in London, one was in LA, but I mean, that's where it falls down. But your point is very well taken, Martin.
Martin, well, actually, I want, RK, you can jump in on this as well.
Okay.
I mean, your view, you as a producer, how you feel about seeing works done virtually isolated performances.
Well, I find it more an intimate experience than it would be in a rehearsal room or even in a theater, because the people are right there and they are talking to each other. Now, how that translates to an effective media on stage with a distance is a question. But in terms of understanding a script, its workings, the relationships, and I've seen some readings where there were maybe 2 or 3 people on the screen at the same time. And so that was giving a sense of ensemble with that. So I've been able to really delve into new work and have enjoyed it and have taken a lot out of it, just having it presented on screen.
We have a lot of hand raises, but I do want to say, in answer to a question you had before, Martin, Larry Daggett quotes the Equity website. The epidemic must be under control with effective testing, few new cases in the area, and contact tracing. They don't allow any of their actors to take any live work right now.
Right.
Individuals who may be infectious can be readily identified and isolated with frequent, regular, and accurate testing with speedy results. So in other words, they do not have a situation where Julianne Boyd is going to be able to have her actors go into that theater where everything's socially distanced. And actually,
they could probably work in South Korea.
All right, but we can't go anywhere though. Nobody will let us Americans into their country now. This is an interesting state of affairs. Van Fisher, I'm taking you off mute. You wanted to say something about Zoom.
Yeah, what I found in doing the readings is listening to the public's comments afterwards. And a lot of them have been amazed, especially this being their first Zoom experience, that they do feel it's very engaging, it's very intimate, and it does require a different technique in terms for the actors to make sure both of them, if there's 2 people talking, they both have to be actively alive, responding and reacting constantly, because you see both actors. But and even the play we have coming up this Sunday, there's a punch that one person throws. You can time it so that it looks as if it's being transferred from one person to the other. It's a little crafty and it takes some skill, but it's been very interesting.
Well, again, I think what I was trying to say before is I think we're developing a new vocabulary as theater professionals. We're learning to speak Zoom or understand Zoom. We're learning to accept the limitations. One of the things that is a little tricky, as a playwright, I'm always concerned with what is somebody doing on stage while they're saying this long speech. That gets hidden in a Zoom presentation because you have the intimacy of the close-up and the person's having the speech. Once you get it up on its feet and start staging it, you might find out that it maybe isn't working as well in a live presentation. So that's just by way of saying that what works in a Zoom presentation and what works on a live stage aren't always the same, but they do intersect in the Venn diagram at some point.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so Sam Berland, I see you. I'm sorry. Did anybody want to respond to Van? I think we should basically agreeing that the intimacy of it is working for a lot of people, and that one of the values of the Zoom readings is the chats that we've been able to see the audience responses. But the other side of that is the chat with people saying their responses is a replacement for the live experience of having people applaud, laugh, and whatever they're doing in a live performance that lets you know what the connection is between the play and the audience. So again, we're just it's not a replacement. It's an alternative. It's a new medium, and we're learning to use the new medium.
Well, you're absolutely right. You can't tell how the audience is reacting. You can't time the laughs. You can't see, how they may be coming to a conclusion before they need to, if there's a structural problem. Those you won't be able to find out because the audience is not involved. You don't hear them. You don't hear their reactions.
So I'm going to go, we still have a lot more questions. So Sam, I'm unmuting you. I'm trying to unmute you. There you go.
Yeah, hi. I was, you were talking earlier about the drive-in that they put a stage up and had cars. If they shot the performance and put up flat screens or projectors, you can see close-up shots of the performers, because if you're in a car, you're not close to the stage. You're going to be seeing tiny little ants. It's hard to see their
They
face.
might be doing it, kind of like rock concerts. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
I
because
know
I've done that.
in England, the musical Six, which is more or less a concert, with six women playing the wives of Henry VIII.
We got a little echo thing going on. Let me see whether it's, okay, try again.
This musical Six, they had to close in the West End, and the show's very successful. It hadn't really opened here yet. I think it was in previews.
Or Six. It was in preview.
But what they're doing in London is they're doing an extensive tour of the UK, playing drive-in theaters all over the country. Again, with a stage, like a rock concert, and I'm willing to bet they do screens so they can use video and make it bigger. But they've just found a way to keep their show alive and kind of do a national tour of it without theaters. And I think that's going to be very successful.
Next we have LY.
Hey guys. So I was just piggybacking on, the intimacy moment we were talking about. And so in our recent thing this weekend, I actually had the narrator actually be emotional, so that if he was describing the kiss, he was doing it in an emotional way right before or right after the actors were supposed to have done such a thing. And my audiences responded well to that. And also we had a scene where there was a physical tussle, and we literally left all that violence off screen. Like, you could hear the actors do it and you saw someone responding to watching it, but we had all of that noise off screen. So it was more powerful because you couldn't see what it was you were imagining it. Thank you.
Thanks, LY. Murray, you were, I was going to call on you earlier anyway, because I was asking my producers whether they're thinking of things in new ways because of virtual presentations, and you certainly are.
Yes. As a matter of fact, that's the positive that came out of this whole thing, was my getting involved with Zoom. I wanted to respond to a couple of things. The gentleman who said his show was going up on Kate's platform, mine did at the beginning of June, and she hadn't gotten the signatory yet. But we paid actors, paid director, and it's very easy. All you have to do is talk to her. She can answer everything for you that you're going to need or not. The one thing that I've come away with in terms of the Zoom platform, because before this whole thing started, I had never heard of Zoom. And when I started watching different readings on it, the caliber and the quality of what has come down is amazing. And I remember taking a lot of webinars on the best practices in Zoom and what can be done. And a couple of things. The fact is, casting, tech support, and rehearsals are probably the most important things for the qualities that come through. There are also so many different technical ways of even syncing if you're doing a musical, which is obviously much harder. But when we did one, the play Bird at the Window, the one that I had done, it was very heavy duty and it was very thought-provoking. And some of the characters were kind of harsh. The casting changed everything, absolutely everything, to where the lead became so vulnerable, and it was against a black background on all of them. And the fact that she was looking straight ahead, but you actually just felt, as Martin was saying, you felt that she was looking at the person she was talking to. Some people had a problem with the fact they didn't see all the little boxes, but it depends on what you're putting on. But to me, the readings, to me, this is a natural going forward. I know I was in a Broadway League meeting 2 weeks ago, a luncheon meeting, virtual, of course, and it was said very clearly that the seats can't come out that theaters can, because people kept saying, when is it going to open? What's happening? Is touring coming first? And the bottom line to the speakers at that particular day was that seats are not coming out. So everybody's going to have to feel comfortable enough sitting next to someone. And it's just a question of how that gets accomplished. So I think Zoom is going to be around, and the caliber of it's going to be around for quite some time until that actually gets accomplished. And I'm loving it personally. I really am.
I'm thinking it's just going to be another tool that will.
Another tool. One other piece. Somebody was talking about streaming. I just watched, I don't know if anybody here saw, this is the National Theater, Small Island. It was the best play I have ever seen in my entire life. It was obviously, without hands down.
Better than Eclipsed?
Oh yeah, you're cutting to the core, baby.
I know.
Well, let's say it was a close second.
All right.
It was phenomenal. And it was obviously filmed when live. The same thing yesterday, I watched Lungs. Lungs was a 2-person play, but they had it on the stage, and there was a piece of plastic in between them. And the interaction between the two actors, this is a director's dream. If they know what they're doing, they can make so many things happen where they were actually interacting and they passed each other. It was amazing what you saw. And that's, I think it's still up. I actually bought tickets for that. That wasn't free. But there are things that can be done, and it takes a different technique. That's what it really has to do. Someone has to, make it happen, but it can be done, beautifully done.
I want to talk a little bit about the details of some of what we're talking about. In terms of shows that are now on hold and that are hoping to reopen, how does, Martin, you might have a good sense of this because you have a general manager background. How is this affecting the budgets? Is it increasing the costs for the producers to a point where it's not feasible, or are they going to cross that bridge when they come to it? They're going to figure it out. How are we dealing with the money aspect of this?
My understanding, Equity, all the unions made a deal with the Broadway League when the shutdown came, how to deal with all of your employees and all of the unions when the shutdown came. And it dealt with the number of weeks they had to be paid, what level they were paid at, and I believe there were a couple extra weeks, or even a month of health benefits that had to be paid in at that point. But the main expense is, again, my understanding is that they're all still paying the basic rent at the theater, which actually
they are, okay.
Which is not a lot of money. A theater might cost you $300,000 a week, but the rent's only $30,000. The rest is all their employees and stuff. But I heard from one producer that what was happening is because of the insurance claims Margot mentioned for lost income, and my off-Broadway show is getting its full insurance claim on that policy. But it is that I've heard the theater owners are being flexible about when they get the money, because theoretically this is a cost of closing and the business interruption on the theatrical package, that you can continue to adjust your claim to recover up to the limits of your policy. But I think it is a stretch. And when the shows reopen, they're going to need 2 or 3 weeks of rehearsal. You can't just open. Tons of marketing. So I think it's going to cost all the shows a big chunk of money to reopen and restart. Even if the set's in the theater already, you've already teched the show, you were in previews, but restarting. And I know in a meeting at SALT in London, the producers were very clear that at the point that they are told theaters can reopen, they need 4 to 6 months to reopen a show. They can't just say, oh, we can open in 3 weeks, great. That you need those months for marketing and prep and getting all your people back to the same city. It's not just like, oh gosh, we can reopen.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't mean 4 months. No.
Oh, go ahead. Margot, go ahead.
So with Diana, we had our 6th preview. We hadn't had the critics in. So we have to remarket. We are using it to rebrand and change the marketing, but that's not the point. We had to remarket because we had no reviews that we could utilize to sell tickets. Also, because we had just started really selling, our advance was not what it would have been. So therefore, luckily, that show has a big reserve. And I think we're going to be okay, but it's going to really eat into it. And my understanding is that as of the end of the week, the insurance money still wasn't settled, even though we had bought the full amount that you could buy, and our claim went in first. You know, God bless Beth's husband, Alan Williams. But even so, it's a real problem. And now, if you were going to set up a Broadway production now, you're not even going to be able to buy insurance that, you know, there'll be a disclaimer for any kind of pandemic or anything like that if you were to buy your insurance today.
Well,
So
I'm thinking this has got to be
what?
This has got to be a disaster for the insurance companies, because no insurance company is expecting 32 shows to have claims in the same time period.
No, plus all the other shows that they insure and all the other stuff. I mean, Chubb is probably choking.
I mean, luckily, our insurance was with the only other carrier that writes these policies, so they're slightly less stressed than Chubb. Still stressed, but you know, the other thing. It's called Hiscox.
Uh-huh.
But the other thing about Broadway, which is different than off-Broadway, is there is a divide on Broadway. You know, there are shows, especially what they call legacy shows, like Chicago, Phantom, Lion King, whose audiences are probably 99.5% tourists from outside the tri-state area, outside of America.
They're not coming back
No.
anytime soon. And I will also say from the regional theater, and I sit on the board of Theater Forward, which is corporate support. And they are looking, the regional theaters that they work on, there are 19 of them, they're looking at just to restart their season when it's open is going to be between $500,000 and $1 million just to get that first production going again. And Martin is correct that it's going to take months to be able to do that once the trigger is pulled.
Tamara, you seem to know a lot about the film business, and I see some interesting comments about how film is going back to work. Can you unmute yourself and tell us what you wrote?
Sure. So film they produced a white paper originally that they sent to New Jersey, New York, and California that was all the unions together. So I posted a link and RK posted a link in there. The one I posted was the one that was sent to all the unions. So all union members got it. What they're doing for film sets now is there's kind of an option of testing people 1 time, 3 times, or 2 times a week, but they're basically isolating their teams, and they're making pods. So they'll be like on a set there will be no more than 17 people, essential people, whenever an actor is present. So they've got a new position that they created, which is kind of like a COVID monitor who takes everyone's temperature every day, who goes through and makes sure the testing gets done. I know of one production in Connecticut that just started up last week that has 2 groups, a bubble in one hotel and a bubble in another hotel. And then they've got 2 medical people who go in between. So the paper that I said, I think it's about 40 pages long. It talks about everything, like how to deal with props, how to deal with cleaning wardrobe. And so it's useful for us in that we're going to also deal with those. So we're talking about reopening, but we're also going to have to talk about how are we changing our backstage practices. If 2 people hold the gun on stage, where does it get in the person, who's the person in between person 1 and person 2 who wipes it down? Right? So those are the kinds of things that they've been super detailed with all of the unions in film and TV that are worth looking at for us, because some of those things are going to become our practice as well.
But are the actors socially distanced, or are they allowed to be?
So
the actors are not socially distanced. And even though you're testing them and you know that they're not necessarily COVID.
Well, it depends. If you're on a film set, then they are quarantining the entire set in the way that they did with productions with other touring companies.
Okay.
So that's one way of doing it. The other option is to not quarantine people, but to test them multiple times a week. And so they're all like the conversations that are happening, and my friend's a makeup artist, and she was telling me like they have to do everything, like have more disposable brushes, there's really specific practices that every union has gotten together to kind of detail out. In terms of actual shooting, things like daytime television, I know with Bold and the Beautiful, they're actually socially distancing. They are shooting in a way that does not, that keeps people about 8 feet apart. And then they'll edit it together in post-production. So their costs have gone up in post-production. In terms of shows, I know like Netflix, the writing has continued on. So they have the entire season of scripts as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 scripts at their disposal. So what some companies are doing is renting a very huge warehouse space, building all their internal sets and shooting all their whole season of internal stuff before they and hoping that things are different by the time they have to go on location, because there's no location shooting at this point.
Well, I wish some of that were adaptable to theater, but I'm not sure.
So here's the thing. Some of it, the part that I find that I'm looking at from my theater spaces are not the shooting part of it, although there is part of that if we're going to continue on in this Zoom world, right? Because that changes what we're able to do. We're able to put people in a room and shoot them and stream that and use that into streaming potentially. But the part for us to be looking at is the things like how are they dealing with props, wardrobe, and some of the overlap that we also have. So that's a good kind of starting point for us to think ahead, because there's a whole line item in our budgets for PPE for our backstage crew, for things that, you know, for how we're going to clean things in the future. And that's not going to change even if we have a vaccine, right? We're still going to be changing our practices of how we sanitize our theater spaces and how all of our workspaces across the board go. And that's a line item we've never had in our budgets before.
Right. And you'll note I put in on my on the chat room, there's a white paper that ART and Harvard has put together that I think is quite useful. It was a proposal, and they're updating it fairly regularly with regard to actual live theater and the protocols that have to be put in place to make that safe.
So we're past 6 o'clock, so we're at the winding down time, which means that hands will probably start raising. My therapist used to call it doorknob conversations. It's the things that you think of to say when you're leaving the room. Paul Smith, I'll unmute you. You can ask your question. I'm unmuting you. You're unmuting you. You have to unmute you. Paul? No.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to address 2 things very quickly. I shared R.K. Greene's concern. I almost cast audience members. We had one of my plays, Badass Women, last month. I was concerned with how does our audience have a reaction? How do we engage them? As it turned out, one of the leads, the 4-character play, one of the actors answered and spoke. She was so terrified. She fell out of her chair. And you could see this online. Although she rehearsed it, it frightened her. Similarly, the other actors' reactions guided the audience. I will say that was the first of 8 plays I plan to do online. We did it both in Blue Jeans and in Zoom. And I guess I've had 20 of my plays in the last couple of years. Martin may remember the phone number.
Paul, we keep breaking up. I mean, we're not hearing you now.
503 back when he was in Addison, because everything I've learned about theater was from what he had done, and I appreciate that. I just publicly saying thank you.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry, Paul, but your sound went in and out, so we didn't hear everything that you said. But I thank you for contributing. Does anybody else have any other questions before we say goodnight? Before I go cook dinner?
What are you having? What are we eating?
I actually don't know tonight. We're down to we're getting a food delivery tonight of all things. So I'm going to scrounge through my refrigerator to figure out what I'm going to make tonight.
We'll all be over around 7.
Okay.
That's right.
I can send you.
Come on, I'll meet you there.
Okay.
Virtual platters if you'd like. Okay, Joanne Phillips.
Any place where there is at this point in time, a written list of protocols that are expected to be in place or at some point down the road for disinfecting theaters.
Tamara, did you put something like that into the chat? A link?
I put the thing of how they're doing it in TV and film, but I think RK put a link to the white paper for, and I think it's in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I know the Off-Broadway League has committees, some on one of them, developing protocols. I know the Broadway League does too.
Right.
And I'll just mention that in Austria and Switzerland, theaters are open now. And we'll be learning a lot by what they're doing, even though they have less of a problem than America currently has.
We're learning a lot in our community, but unfortunately our country is not learning much.
Right.
So we're a subset of a larger group that is not making it easy for us to come back to normal. Oh well. So thank you, Martin. Thank you, Margot, and thank you, RK, and also Murray. Hello, Murray. You're up and visible now too. Thanks for having the conversation with us. Next week, everybody, I have Joe Barros and Jen Sandler from New York Theater Barn, and Tom Pullum, who has a thing called streaming Broadway, streamingmusicals.com. We're going to talk about making musicals virtually. I don't know whether we're going to have anything encouraging to say about live presentations of musicals, but I know that there are ways of doing it so that you can pre-record and do some great editing and post-production. So we'll find out what everybody has to say next week. And then the week after that, I've got another great lineup of people. So thank you for being part of the community. I appreciate having you all here. Grateful to see you all. And you can hang out a little bit. You can all put your audio back on, come back in the room. I'll say bye to you, some of you individually. And thank you, Margot. Thank you, RK. I think Martin's already scooted.
Hey, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Bob. It was really, I'm glad I did it.
I'm glad you did it too.
Glad
Thank
to
you.
see everybody.
If it hadn't been for you, I wasn't going to do it July 3rd at all today, because everybody kept saying, oh, nobody's going to be able to make it to a July 3rd, 4th of July weekend, blah, blah, blah. We had 60 people. We had 60 people.
Thank you all.
Well, it's not a weekend. Every day is a weekend, Bob.
What?
Every day is a weekend.
Every day, I know, yeah.
But have a nice holiday.
Be well and stay safe all.
Bye.
Thanks, Bob. Have a good 4th.
Thank you, Margot. Thank you, everybody.
Pleasure.
Thank you all.
Right.